Today, we're tackling something called Restitution of Conjugal Rights. It sounds pretty intimidating, right? It's a legal tool that can actually force a spouse to come back home. It's controversial for sure, but it all really boils down to one simple, very human question.
So what happens when your spouse just walks out on you? I mean, imagine it. One day they pack a bag and they're just gone. No real explanation, no good reason. Your whole world is just flipped upside down. So what do? Most of us would probably think, well, I guess the only option is divorce.
But here's the thing. What if you don't want a divorce? What if you truly believe your marriage can be saved? Well, turns out the law has an answer for that. And it's not divorce. It's something pretty surprising and honestly very controversial.
Okay, so let's get into it. This surprising remedy is called Restitution of Conjugal Rights, or RCR for short. It's laid out in Section 9 of the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. And the whole point of it isn't to end the marriage, it's actually the complete opposite. It's the law's attempt to piece a broken marriage back together.
So what is this thing exactly? Put simply, it's a legal remedy where a court can actually order a spouse, the one who left without a good reason, to come back home and resume their marital duties. Yeah, you heard that right. It's literally the law stepping in to try and save a marriage. And this is really the key difference, right? Think of divorce as the final chapter. Its goal is to completely dissolve the marriage. It's over. But RCR? That's more like hitting the pause button. Its entire goal is to stop the separation in its tracks and try to get things back on course.
Now hold on, you can't just stroll into court and demand this. It's not that simple. The court has a pretty strict checklist it has to go through to decide if issuing one of these orders, or a decree, to use the legal term, is the right move. So let's break down the 5 key conditions a court looks for.
Okay, so first up, there has to be a valid marriage to begin with. Makes sense. Second, one spouse has to have withdrawn from the society of the other. We'll get into what that means. Third, and this is the big one, this is the hurdle, the withdrawal has to be without any reasonable cause. Fourth, the court has to actually try and get the couple to reconcile. And finally, of course, the marriage can't already be legally over.
Right, so that third condition is really the heart of the matter, proving someone left without reasonable cause. This is where things get messy and where most of the legal fights happen. I mean, what is a reasonable cause to leave your partner? Cruelty? Adultery? What's the bar here? And critically, who has to prove it?
And this is where it gets really interesting. The law actually puts the burden of proof, that's the responsibility to prove something, squarely on the person who left. So if you're the one who was left behind, you don't have to prove there wasn't a good reason. Instead, the spouse who walked out has to convince the court that they had a really good reason for leaving.
Okay, I know this all sounds a little abstract, legal principles and all that. So to make it real, let's look at how this actually plays out in a courtroom. We're going to dive into a couple of landmark cases that really defined how this law is used today.
First up, we've got a classic case from 1964 that went all the way to the Supreme Court, Tirath Kaur versus Kirpal Singh. This one is super important because it really helped define what reasonable cause actually means in the eyes of the law.
So here's what happened. The wife, Tirath Kaur, files for RCR after her husband just up and leaves. His defense? He claims she was guilty of some kind of misconduct, but here's the kicker, he had zero proof. So the court was faced with a huge question. Is just suspecting your spouse of something enough of a reason to walk out on them?
And the court's answer was a resounding nope. This case laid down a critical legal principle. You can't just abandon your spouse based on a hunch or unproven allegations. If you're going to claim you had a reasonable cause to leave, you better be able to back it up with some real, credible evidence.
All right, let's jump forward a few years to 1971, to another fascinating case, Shanti Nigam versus Ramesh Chandra Nigam. This one is so interesting because it actually expanded the whole idea of what it even means to leave a marriage.
See, in this situation, the husband never actually packed his bags and left. They were still living under the same roof, but he completely refused to live with her as a husband, basically treating her like a ghost in her own home. And his justification was, again, that he suspected her of adultery. This created a really unique question for the court. Can you withdraw from a marriage without ever leaving the house?
And the court's ruling was a game changer. They said that withdrawal from society isn't just about physically leaving. You can emotionally and socially abandon your partner even while you're still sharing a home. That kind of persistent, unjustified refusal to live as a married couple, That's enough for a court to step in and grant that RCR decree.
So we've looked at the law, we've looked at the cases, and it all leads to the big question, right? Why does this even matter today? In the 21st century, is this law a useful tool for saving marriages, or is it just some outdated relic that stomps all over our personal freedoms?
Looking at this chart, you can really see the stark differences. RCR wants to restore, divorce wants to dissolve. But look at that last row, enforcement. A court can actually enforce an RCR decree. And this is where the huge controversy lies. Critics say, wait a minute, this violates our fundamental rights to privacy and autonomy. I mean, can a court really force you to stay in a relationship you desperately want to leave?
And believe me, the debate around this is fierce. On one side, you have people who say RCR is crucial for protecting the institution of marriage. They argue it's a legal shield, especially for a spouse who might be financially dependent and has just been abandoned for no good reason. But on the other side, critics are quick to point out that this law is a holdover from British colonial times, a relic from an era where marriage was viewed very, very differently. They argue that forcing people to live together in today's world is just plain unconstitutional.
And that really brings us to the heart of it all. This whole idea of RCR is this massive clash between two powerful ideas: the sanctity of marriage on one hand, and an individual's right to choose their own life on the other. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. In the 21st century, should a court really have the power to order a spouse to return home? It's a question that forces us to think about what marriage means today and how much power the law should have over our most personal relationships. Thanks for digging into this with me.